The official synopsis is Lanterns follows the adventures of two Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and John Stewart, who are described as intergalactic cops. The series focuses on them investigating a murder in the American heartland, presenting a dark, Earth-based mystery. This setup is likened to the detective series True Detective, suggesting a gritty, crime-focused narrative within the DC universe. Episode 1. The episode is bookend with flash-forwards of John Stewart and Hal Jordan being interrogated by strange, alien voices in dark, unearthly rooms. They explain how they met. The main story is set in modern-day USA. In a town called Hope Springs in Iowa, an elderly man is murdered during a robbery. The murderer steals a glowing green lantern and a green ring. There are visual hints that the old man once had some connection to the Justice Society of America, a group of superheroes active in the 1950s. It feels vaguely Watchmen-ish. The next morning we meet Hal Jordan, flying a fighter jet high enough to see the stars. He wakes up and it's a dream. He's living as a drifter bumming it across the country, kind of like he was in the 90s comics. He's got the white temples and is way more angsty/jaded than Ryan Reynolds Hal. He does not have his ring, but still has a heroic streak that shows when he stops a gas station robbery. He moves on before the police can find him. Meanwhile, the sheriff of Hope Springs, Kerrie Kane, investigates the murder from the opening scene. GL John Stewart arrives. Sheriff Kerrie is surprised to see him, saying she knew the previous Green Lantern, and he wasn't black. John states that he's new. John initially thinks investigating a small-time murder in bumfuck nowhere is below his pay grade, until he finds out who the murder victim was, Golden Age GL Alan Scott. John picks up an energy signature at the crime scene using his ring. Hal arrives in town shortly after, and uses the last of his money to purchase a few hours flying a prop plane. It makes him happy, but he realizes he needs a job. Hal approaches Sheriff Kerrie. Apparently, they once had a relationship in the past, back when Hal was Green Lantern. Kane isn't particularly happy to see him, since she now has a husband and children. However, she sees Hal is down on his luck and lets him have a job as a janitor at the police station. While working, Hal sees John visit with Kane as GL. John has no idea who Hal is. He's mentioned he never knew the guy who owned the ring before him. John works on the case, flying all across the state scanning for the energy signature from the murder scene. Though he takes his job as GL seriously, he's very inexperienced. He finds a lead on the signature and alerts Sheriff Kerrie before investigating. Hal, wanting a piece of the action, sneaks off after the sheriff. On the ranch, John is ambushed by shape-shifting aliens posing as a family of ranchers. They're freaky, amorphous flesh blob things that meld together. John's inexperience comes to bite him, as he forgot to charge his ring. It gets pulled off by the aliens before John can recharge it with his summon lantern. Sheriff Kerrie arrives and saves John, but both of them get cornered until Hal comes to the rescue. He juices up John's ring and uses it to deal with the shapeshifters, and John is amazed to realize that Hal was his predecessor all along. Episode 2. With Hal's help, John and Sheriff Kerrie detain the alien suspects at the local police station. Hal recognizes them as a Horminth Collective, an amorphous flesh blob that can split into multiple shape-shifting bodies. He falls back into his old ways as GL, advising John and Kane to detain the suspects on the moon until they can be transferred to OA. The collective begs them for terrestrial containment, and John and Kerrie allow it. Angered by what he sees as lax treatment of a dangerous criminal, Hal relinquishes the ring to John and prepares to leave town again. John returns to investigating. Searching the ranch, he finds the strange energy signature again. It leads him to Alan Scott's depowered ring, discarded in a field, but the stolen lantern remains missing. John interrogates the Horminth Collective, which insists it had nothing to do with Alan Scott's murder, but refuses to reveal why it is on Earth. Because of Hal's advice being ignored, the collective escapes captivity, and John fails to stop them. Sheriff Kerrie proposes he ask Hal for assistance due to the former Green Lantern's experience, but John is too proud to accept help. Kerrie goes to find Hal on his behalf, stopping him at a bus station at the edge of town. They discuss what happened to his life, and Hal reveals little while implying that he's made a lot of decisions that he regrets. He decides to reluctantly stay and help John, but only because Kerrie asked him to. They get flirty, but stop short of reigniting any old flame between them due to Kerrie's current marriage and family. John, meanwhile, is angry with himself for screwing up twice. We get some insight on his motivation through flash cuts of the past. He's a war veteran and a former Marine with some obvious emotional trauma weighing on him. He hunts down and captures a part of the Horminth Collective and notifies the sheriff that he's done so. Once again, however, he's ambushed by collective drones from amongst a crowd of onlookers. John is hesitant to use his ring since he can't tell which of the bystanders are innocent and which are Horminth shapeshifters. Sheriff Kerrie and Hal arrive to help, and there's an action scene that mirrors a real-life riot in the downtown area of Hope Springs. Hal meets up with John in the middle of the brawl and coaches the younger GL on how to recognize the Horminth. With Hal's guidance, John drops the entire collective with one punch to the creature's brain, disguised as a small child. The riot ends. Without waiting to detain the Horminth again, Hal begins brutally interrogating the creature in the middle of the street. John is perturbed by what is essentially torture, but Hal gets the Horminth to finally admit why it is on Earth. It was hired by the Black Hand to recover and traffic an item called the Star Heart, and tells them where they can find it. After Hal finishes the interrogation, he tells John to throw the Horminth to the moon. John cannot bring himself to condemn the creature to misery, so he hands Hal the ring. Hal launches the creature into space in a sphere of green light, then cavalierly hands the ring back to John. John is unsettled by the ease with which Hal is willing to inflict pain on another creature. End Episode 2. Episode 3. Hope Springs starts to recover after the chaos caused by the Horminth Collective. John does his best to repair the damages, earning the town's trust and admiration. Hal is clearly envious of the townsfolk's adoration of him, but tries not to show it. Hal takes John on a beat, touring the less scrupulous parts of town. Using his wits and experience rather than a ring, he identifies a black market trafficker from the Alien Spider Guild in a gun shop who admits to smuggling the Horminth onto Earth. After an interrogation and search, John is unsettled by Hal's unsavory methods of dealing with the underworld and equally reluctant to take advice from someone who threw away the ring. Hal hotly insists he threw nothing away. Between their duties, they discuss different philosophies of life and crime fighting, from John's refusal to wear a mask to Hal's supposedly corny oath. Their disagreements lead them to a deeper discussion in a diner, where both men touch on their shared regrets and motivations. Striking a nerve in each other, they decide to resolve their differences in a brawl. Hal hotly insists John leave the ring in his truck's glove compartment, since it will automatically protect him if it's on his person. John, equally angry, agrees. They fight to a standstill, both refusing to admit defeat until Sheriff Kerrie arrives to break things up. Hal and John return to Hal's rental truck, realizing with a sinking feeling that the ring has been stolen from the glove box. The rest of the episode intercuts between the shenanigans of Hal and John trying to track down their power ring, with Sheriff Kerrie doing the mundane, but useful, work of pursuing leads. Her findings indicate that Alan Scott had an estranged teenage daughter who visited him just the day before the murder. Hal and John finally find the ring after tracking down several local ne'er-do-wells. They've sold it to the gun store owner, oblivious to the fact that the man is actually an alien from the Spider Guild. John is hesitant to face the Spider Guild and its agents without the help of the ring, but Hal brazenly approaches the problem as he always has this far, fists first. It doesn't go smoothly, but using a combination of teamwork, grit, and sheer ballsiness, the two GLs are able to recover John's power ring from the guildsman and his henchmen. Both Hal and John walk away from the experience with a newfound respect for one another. Hal realizes that John is a true blue man of honor rather than a glory hound, and John develops a new understanding of Hal's fearlessness. He is brave, but that bravery borders on suicidal mania. John seems to both respect and fear this in equal measure. Reuniting with Sheriff Kerrie, the GLs learn about Alan Scott's daughter, 17-year-old Jennifer Lynn Hayden from Wisconsin. Though her father has been dead for days, she suspiciously hasn't entered the picture. Hal and John think it's time to pay her a visit. End Episode 3. Episode 4. Hal and John take a road trip to Wisconsin. Sheriff Kerrie cannot accompany them, as the region is outside of her jurisdiction, but not outside of a Green Lantern's. John wishes to use the ring to fly them there quickly, but Hal insists that they take his truck. In his experience, having the godlike powers of Green Lantern leads to a sense of detachment from the people you protect. He counsels John to remain grounded, alluding to an old friend that taught him. Something very similar back in Hal's heyday. This is a minor allusion to Hal's comic book friendship with Green Arrow. During the trip, John pokes and prods at Hal, wrestling more information out of him regarding the older man's history. Hal resists opening up at first before sharing his sobering reality. He retired as Green Lantern out of a desire for a normal life with his old flame, Carol Ferris. Unfortunately, despite Hal's best efforts, his relationship with Carol fell apart nonetheless, leaving him with no ring, no love, and no direction in life. John is moved by Hal's honesty. They arrive in a small town called Cedar Hollow, at the adopted home of Jenny Lynn Hayden. The girl's adoptive mother is reluctant to allow the two men to talk to the girl, and upon meeting her, they see why. She is a metahuman disfigured from her father's long-term contact with the Starheart. The girl hates her heritage and wants a normal life, and a brief conversation quickly reveals she had nothing to do with her estranged father's death. However, it does point Hal and John towards another lead, Jenny's equally estranged twin brother, Todd Rice, who lives not far from Hope Springs back in Iowa. The tense interrogation reveals the troubling reality that superheroism in this world leaves many scarred and damaged. On the trip across the state border to find Jenny's brother Todd, John opens up about himself to Hal. He was once a Marine who served in Iraq, and in order to protect his platoon, John was forced to shoot and kill an enemy combatant who was only a child. The incident has haunted him ever since, and was why he hesitated to act during the riot caused by the Horminth. The line between innocence and guilt was once again blurred. Hal is surprised to learn of John's military service, finding it a point of familiarity as Hal was in the Air Force. Though the two men share scars and regrets, if there is one thing both can agree on, it's that being Green Lantern is one of the few choices in life they have no regrets over. Back in Iowa, they attempt to find Todd Rice at his residence in the Grasping Flats, a creepy halfway house for troubled youths. A search uncovers something startling. The Starheart is there amongst Rice's belongings. Before they can contact Sheriff Kerrie, however, a sinister shadow creature emerges to dispatch Hal and flee the scene. John gives chase, and after an airborne pursuit across the countryside, he subdues the assailant. It turns out to be none but Todd Rice himself. End Episode 4. Episode 5. John, Hal, and Kerrie interrogate Todd Rice in the police station at Hope Springs. He has a record as a juvenile repeat offender with links to gang activity in cities like Gotham and Detroit. It's clear that he is quite mentally disturbed, unwilling to speak to them openly, and cryptically stating that Hal is a black shadow, clinging to John's light. While examining the Starheart in evidence, Hal gives some background on the link between it and John's lantern. Though both were created by the Guardians of the Universe, the Starheart was a far more primal, uncontrollable source of power. It was only later that they refined the green element into something suitable to be used as a weapon, meaning that the Starheart is effectively a prototype. Hal tries to harness the power of the Starheart with Alan Scott's ring, but the power does not avail itself to him. To Kerrie, Hal privately voices his desire to have a ring of his own once again. It seems he's allowing himself to finally drop his tough guy persona and be vulnerable with her, and things almost get intimate. But Kerrie pulls back, and Hal instantly clams up again. The next day, the owner of the Grasping Flats halfway house arrives at the police station to bail Rice out. The man is William Macon, a wealthy local real estate mogul and Rice's personal caretaker. He provides an alibi that all but exonerates Rice of any wrongdoing. Rice has recently begun working for and living with Macon at his own private estate, where Macon runs a religious institution meant to reform troubled youths. He also provides a reason for the Starheart's existence in Rice's possession. Alan Scott gifted it to his son shortly before his death. A scan with John's ring reveals that Macon is telling the truth, and despite the fishiness of the situation, Sheriff Kerrie convinces the Lanterns to let Rice and Macon walk free with the Starheart. John is livid at having to do this, but Hal insists it's the right call overall. John flies off to investigate Macon himself, much to Hal's chagrin. Kerrie remarks that Hal's hot-headedness must be rubbing off on the younger GL. Investigating Macon's estate and institution, the hand of God's mercy, John finds no apparent evidence of any foul play. He does, however, find Macon's wife Zoe, whom he is immediately spellbound by. Zoe insists that her husband is a good man, and though it's clear John isn't fully convinced, he relinquishes his brazen violation of her family's privacy and leaves. Dejected that the evidence trail has gone seemingly cold, John retreats to a local bar where he finds Hal. The two reminisce about their shared frustrations. As they do, they see a familiar face on TV. Guy Gardner, Earth's other Green Lantern, is showboating in Des Moines not far from Hope Springs. Guy is John's sector partner, though they've never truly worked together. Hal reveals that Gardner's current power ring is actually Hal's old one, and John mischievously proposes that Hal reclaim it. Hal grins. End Episode 5. Episode 6. In Des Moines, we get a peek at Guy Gardner's life as GL. It's vastly different from John's. Guy is a total asshole, gambling and getting drunk and paying hookers and using his ring to make money doing parlor tricks in bars. He's a loose cannon with a penchant for unrestrained violence, who loves being famous and who has no sense of responsibility. John and Hal drop in on him at his trashed hotel room. The mood of their scenes in this episode is honestly really fun, as it's clear that by now Hal and John have really bonded as brothers. They make fun of Guy for being such a dickhead with his powers, clearly trying to egg him on into doing something stupid. John takes advantage of Gardner's love of gambling by proposing a wager. Gardner and Hal arm wrestle, and if Hal wins, he gets his old ring back for a day. Gardner accepts and promptly beats Hal by cheating with his ring. Dissatisfied, Hal goes double or nothing. They play a game of chicken, and the winner gets the ring for a week. Gardner cockily accepts. Meanwhile, back in Hope Springs, Sheriff Kerrie keeps an eye on William Macon and the hand of God's mercy. Digging through old town records, she learns of Macon's family background. They began as owners of a humble funeral parlor before expanding to own half the property in Hope Springs. She also digs up some sinister facts about Macon's parents' deaths and their tangential connection with several brutal murders in the town's past. Kerrie arrives at Macon's estate and has a cold interaction with Macon's wife Zoe. In frustration, the sheriff wonders where the Green Lanterns are. Back in Des Moines, Guy and Hal face off in a game of chicken on a pair of motorcycles. This time, Hal is the one to win. Furious, Gardner proposes a final contest, a full-on fistfight with no rings. The winner gets to be Green Lantern of Earth permanently. John is anxious about the proposal, having already seen Gardner's penchant for violence. Hal, however, accepts. Guy makes a big show of the ordeal, hosting the event at a local boxing gym in full view of a large audience. The fight gets off to a rough start, with Guy pummeling his older opponent. Hal, however, refuses to stay down, outlasting Gardner through sheer endurance and will. In the aftermath, Hal accepts his old ring back from a reluctant Gardner. Elated, he and John take to the skies together for the first time as superpowered partners. While continuing to snoop, Sheriff Kerrie uncovers a bizarre ritual occurring amongst the religious zealots of the Hand of God's Mercy. She witnesses Alan Scott's son, Todd Rice, willingly use himself as a human sacrifice to the cult, who burn him alive with the Star Heart in an effort to summon an extraterrestrial entity they call the Center. William Macon appears, with his followers referring to him as the Black Hand. They apprehend the sheriff before she can escape. End Episode 6. Episode 7. Hal and John return to Hope Springs to the startling news of Sheriff Kerrie's disappearance. This time it's Hal's turn to fly off the handle. He practically turns the town upside down in his search for her, with John desperately pursuing in an effort to cool him off. Hal initially confronts Macon, but has no conclusive proof of any wrongdoing. They circle back to their previous lead with the Spider Guild operation. Both of the GLs are disturbed to learn that the crime ring is even more gruesome than they'd previously believed, uncovering a full-fledged anthroform trafficking ring that was used to smuggle the Horminth Collective onto Earth. Amongst the refugees, they find Sheriff Kerrie, alive but gruesomely disfigured and hardly resembling anything human anymore. In a rage, Hal uses his ring to do what he'd threatened in his previous interaction with the Spider Guild. He murders all of them, declaring to John, "You saw it. It was self-defense." John is horrified by Hal's behavior, but has little time to reflect on it as several other members of the Green Lantern Corps descend on Earth: CHB, Salak, and Katma-Tue. They initially came to retrieve the Horminth Collective from its imprisonment on the moon, but have been alerted to Hal's rampage in Hope Springs. They darkly recognize that Hal should not have his ring, and take both he and John into custody. The two are transported to OA, where John submits to interrogation. Here's where the bookends of John and Hal's interrogations from Episode 1 come into play. Here, in this interrogation, John learns more about Hal's prior disbarment from the Green Lantern Corps. Salak claims that Jordan had cracked and couldn't handle the mental strain of his responsibilities. He also implies that Jordan is not at all what he has appeared, and provides disturbingly sound motive for Hal to be the true suspect behind Alan Scott's murder. Perhaps it was Hal who initially stole the Starheart, hoping to claim its power for himself before ditching it with Todd Rice after discovering he couldn't use it. John doesn't want to believe any of it. He is let off with a grim warning from his superiors, the Guardians, who send both of the humans home. Back on Earth, John is given back custody of his and Hal's rings. John returns to Hope Springs to mourn his failures. Here he is approached again by Hal, who asks for his ring back. John is deeply suspicious, which Hal is aware of and claims to understand, but Hal explains that, despite his powerlessness, his will to solve the case and avenge Kerrie remains steadfast. Jordan asks John to trust him and help him tie up loose ends. Though hesitant, John hands over Hal's ring. They charge up together one last time. End Episode 7. Episode 8. Hal and John resume their investigation, discovering the clues Sheriff Kerrie had dug up about Hope Springs' gruesome history and the shady past of the Hand of God's Mercy. The pieces of the puzzle all begin falling into place. The Black Hand is a cult that has been run by the Macon family for decades, performing necromantic ritual sacrifices in a repeated effort to summon an eldritch being known as the Center. Their efforts have never taken, until now, due to the volatile power of the Starheart. Their latest sacrifice of Todd Rice, however, seems not to have summoned the intended entity. Due to Rice's otherworldly metahuman abilities, the cult has instead summoned a creature of darkness from beyond the veil of space, something known as a Sun Eater. It begins slowly devouring the light of the Earth's sun, plunging the planet into darkness. In the midst of all this, Hal grapples with his own fall from grace. He knows what he has done wrong, and just wants to put things right if he can. He and John are caught between two impossible choices: disobeying the Green Lantern Corps' orders not to intervene, or allowing their planet to suffer the consequences of their inaction. Ultimately, they decide to step in and stop the cult of the Black Hand, only to find that their efforts are for naught. The Sun Eater has already been summoned, and it will take an extraordinary amount of light in order to destroy it. In the fight against the cult, Hal's ring is remotely deactivated by the GLC in order to prevent its use. John realizes it's up to him to stop the Sun Eater, but he doesn't know if he has what it takes. Realizing what must be done, Hal decides to take John's ring for himself and fly into space to face the Sun Eater in John's stead. He pours everything he has into the creature, overloading the Sun Eater, the ring, and himself with sheer light and power. As the power disintegrates Hal, he shouts his old oath one final time. On Earth below, John watches as the blackened sky turns dazzling green and then fades back to a sunlit day. He realizes that Hal has sacrificed himself to save them all. Once again, John is brought to OA for disciplinary action by the Guardians. However, John has no regrets for his actions, nor does he have any doubts as to Hal Jordan's true character. Grudgingly admitting that John made the proper judgment call, the Guardians reactivate Hal's old ring and pass it on to John. He is left as the sole Green Lantern of Earth, a responsibility that he solemnly accepts. John's final act of the series is to adopt Hal Jordan's old oath as his own, the same oath that he once accused of being corny, but now which he understands the true meaning and weight of. Yendi.